All right, so the ZenML grid expectations integration. Stefan, I would give the floor over to you as you are the chief architect of this integration. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Hamza. Great to have everyone here. This is really exciting. We've finally done it. Our first data validator is here. And I'm going to walk you through a short demo of how what a great pair ZenML is, ZenML and Great Expectations make. I have a Jupyter notebook here, and the first thing that I'm going to do is, well, I would normally use to install several ZenML and several integrations. I have already done that to speed things up a little. So I'm just going to skip these. This is basic introductory work that we do with everything that we demo at ZenML, and doesn't really make sense to go through that again. The interesting part, the first interesting piece of this demo is how we set up the MLOps stack to include great expectations in ZenML. What I have here is a stack that consists of great expectations as our brand new data validator stack component. It's just the first of many to come, and we're still shaping up our data validation abstraction. So keep an eye on our Slack channel for more announcements on what's to come. The other interesting part that's going to be part of this stack is an S3 artifact store. That is important because I will show you that with just a couple of lines of bash commands, you can add great expectations into a ZenML stack and make it use whatever we feature as an artifact store in our stack. So whatever you have there, S3, Google Cloud Storage, Azure, anything that you have in there, it will be automatically used by Great Expectations as a backend for all the information that Great Expectation is storing. Things like validation rules, data documentation, and I'll show you that in a moment. This is what I was talking about. So these are the few lines of code, lines of bash, command lines that, when run, will create a stack. The data validation is just this part, a data validator register. We also include a Slack alerter in here, and why I'm doing that will become obvious when I show you the pipelines, the ZenML pipelines that would be part of this demo. Short explanation for that is we want to send messages to Slack regarding the data validation results that are being produced by the pipeline execution. So I'll just run this real quick. You'll see some errors because I did the same thing as with the package installations. I already created all of these components in advance to speed things up a bit. All right, so now some package imports from ZenML mostly, but also from Great Expectations and scikit-learn, which will be part of this demo. Then we will define some steps for our ZenML pipelines. And this is, again, the same pattern that you see when you're working with ZenML. You just define your steps, and then you include those steps in pipelines. And I'll just walk you briefly through what these steps are. This is a data loader step that we'll use to ingest data. In this case, the Wisconsin data set with the breast cancer statistics, and we use this to basically simulate two use cases: loading data for training a machine learning model, so training data, but also loading what we call live data or real world data that we might use in to perform things like batch predictions or batch inference in a second pipeline. Then the ZenML integration brings something that we call built-in steps. built-in pipeline steps. So we already have these shipped with ZenML. All you have to do is instantiate them and include them in your pipeline. Two steps are included with ZenML. One that does profiling with great expectations, that is, creates, looks at data sets and automatically creates validation rules out of that. Things that are called in great expectations nomenclature expectation suites. The second one takes in an expectation suite already configured or profiled, inferred from an existing data set, and runs validations on it and returns the results. Here. Then we also include, we define another step to analyze the results that are coming from the data validation step, and we'll use the message that this step returns to send an announcement in our Slack channel. Next come the interesting part, the pipelines, which are quite simple because I try to keep this example brief. There is a profiling pipeline that takes in the data set and creates and uses the great expectations to infer data validation rules, also known as great expectation suites. There's a second pipeline that takes in the same another data set that uses an import step, uses then the data that comes out of that, and uses the included great expectations validation step that we have that we ship with ZenML to run data quality checks on it, and then the checker and the alert steps are also included to send the information back to a medium where users can interact and see what's happening, in this case, Slack. With those two pipelines in check, we can just run them quickly, and I will do so right now. What I want to show you in the meantime is that in the S3 storage backend that we have set up for this example, the great expectations ZenML integration will automatically create all those objects that it needs to store. All the information that it needs to store will show up here, things like expectation suites and validation results as we are running the pipelines. For example, we don't yet have validations here because we didn't run the validation pipeline yet, but we should have an expectation suite. In this case, the one that we just created for the breast cancer data set. Next, I will run the validation pipeline, and I'm going to show you what these pipelines look like exactly using one of our visualizations, just to make it clear what exactly is happening here. And we should be seeing some validations being saved in the S3 store right about now. There we go. And I don't know if you can see this pop up on my screen, but I'm going to switch to Slack. And you'll see that we just posted a message with the results from our validation pipeline. Failed in this case because the validation rules that are inferred from data sets by great expectations are really tight fitted to the data. They need to go through some manual interaction and be pruned and better fit to the data sets. Otherwise, they will just fail in all the validations. So finally, the post-execution workflow where we can visualize the pipelines and the results from our pipelines. have just two utility functions here. So what I'll show you next is four things. One is what the profiling pipeline really looks like. This is a DAG representation of the profiling pipeline. This is the important step. And the thing to note here is the great expectation profiler step that's in here, and that takes in a data set and returns an expectation suite. And you can see that everything is saved in our S3 artifact store. Really simple pipeline. The next one, the validation pipeline, will take in. So for the validation step, the great expectation validation step takes in a data set, another data set. This time the one with real live data, and will output a checkpoint result. The checkpoint result, as well as all the other artifacts like expectation suites in our pipelines, are automatically saved to saved by ZenML, versioned and tracked in the artifact store. So we can go back at any time here and revisit what happened in the pipeline, visualize these results, as I'll show you in just a couple of seconds, and overall have these nice features for tracing artifacts, lineage, and provenance that are really useful in any MLOps setting. Finally, you can see that from the checkpoint result that comes out of the validation step goes into other steps that finally end up with this message being printed by our Slack alerter step in Slack. All right. And with these two out of the way, we'll see what the visualizations are. And I mean, there's no surprise here that our visualizations for Great Expectations objects come from the Great Expectations data docs. That's where everything is located in Great Expectations. We generate these after every pipeline step, so we can you keep a complete record of everything that is happening with your pipelines. In this case, this shows the expectations suite that was generated from the data set with all the validation rules that came out of it. On one hand, on the other hand, this is the validation that we performed on the live data. Some of these have failed because they're, like I said, really overfitted on the input data that was used to profile for the profiling. So this is expected. One other thing that I just want to quickly show you, and then I guess we can move on to other things, is if I run any of these pipelines again, say the validation pipeline, let me go back a bit. So if I run this multiple times, what you'll see is a complete record of everything that is happening in your pipelines through the Great Expectations data docs. Let's just wait a couple of seconds for this to finish. I'll show you what I mean. More than a couple of seconds. All right, we should have another message in Slack saying that this failed again. So if I switch back to this and I look at the root of the Great Expectations data docs, I have two validations results now. And everything is, and of course, one expectation suite. Everything will be populated here as you run pipelines, ZenML pipelines, maybe even tied to a scheduler will appear here. And there's a two-way correspondence between what you see here and the pipelines, the ZenML pipelines that you have set up for data validation. So you can have complete tracking over your entire machine learning project.
All right. Wow. Stefan, is that it? Like, was that the end? I just wanted to confirm.
That's about it. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Woo, that was awesome. Um, such an amazing integration. I mean, we had a blast working on this internally. Happy to showcase it for the first time. I'm going to stop recording now. So for the people watching on YouTube, I hope you enjoyed that.